Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
Good evening, everyone. We are reading Psalm 46. So if you haven't already done so, please open to that psalm. Rabbi Siegel introduces this with the following terms: faith, hyperbole, mania, or fantasy. So, what is it? Because it has all kinds of different perspectives associated with it. We'll see. My additional comment is, as opposed to not last week's, but the other ones, there is no questioning or yelling at God. God is a major focus here. All faith. This speaks of faith, affirming trust in God, yelling at God. So this is in that respect, sort of a refreshing perspective. It's more positive, although it's going to refer to some challenging things, but not as it relates to Am Yisrael. So we will take a look at that. All right. So we begin. Verse 1. Lamatseach liknei Korach al alamot shir. For the leader of the Korachites, here that we're still with the Korachites, right, our dear friends, on alamot, a song. Okay, so a poem. All right. Is probably, one wonders if alamot might be an instrument that accompanies the song. It could be. Or alamot could be some kind of a musical mode or a poetic mode, like we saw, with other terms before. Nobody knows. So we're not going to waste any time on guessing that. All right, moving on. Elohim lanu machasev va'oz, Ezra v'tzarot nimtza me'od. So, God is our refuge and strength, and aid in trouble, ever present. All right, so first of all, Elohim. We're now going to, this is just a laying out of what we're going to expect here. So remember, we've seen Psalms where God is mentioned 20 times. God is mentioned only a few times. This one, God is mentioned in different ways 10 times. Which means it's a God-serious psalm. 5 times it's Elohim. Twice it's that word, but in the construct Elohe Yaakov, the God of Jacob. So, but it's 7 times Elohim, 3 times Yud He Vav He, 2 of them being in what we would call the refrain. Okay? All right, so clearly the Elohims have it, and again, I'm going to push the point that Elohim generally is associated with strength, and I'm not going to say categorically Adonai is only with compassion, but it often is associated with the softer side of God. Okay, although we're going to see that there's an exception here, and we'll just spend a few moments talking about that, because there's grounds for an exception in considering God to be only compassion or softness. Okay. All right. So, moving on. So let's look at the phrase again. So God He is our machaseh. Okay. It means a refuge. Okay. Chet samacheh means to take refuge. So He's our protector, our refuge. Now you will see when we come to the refrain, there's another word that is used, which is mizgav, from the root samach, sin, gimel vet, sagav, mizgav. That also means refuge. So we have a refuge mentioned here at the very beginning, and with the word machaseh, and 2 mizgavs in the refrains. All right, so keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. But again, that's Elohim because it's a protective thing. He is our protection. So it's associating ourselves with his protective strength. And as you will see, that's going to be a key element of the psalm, which is God's strength. Okay, but in each case, we are the beneficiaries of it. It never turns against us, as we have seen in others. It does not turn against us. There's no discussion here of God's being angry with us. Okay, all right, and that's sort of refreshing. We can be good people. That's nice to know. Okay, all right. So God is, well, it says here, right? What does it say? Oz, Machseba Oz. He was our refuge and strength. Ezra, he is aid, he is help during periods of trouble, and he's ever present. He's Nimtza, Ma'od. He's there when you need him. Okay? Not like, you get on the phone, you're trying to reach a number, you call the number, right? And there's the answering machine, and you leave a message, and then 2 days later, you call them up again, and you leave a message, and 2 days later you call them up, and once again you leave a message. They're never there. What this is saying is that God is Nimtza Ma'od. He's very much present, right? He's ever present. You can get him. Okay. All right. Now, one other point, talking about these uses of God's name. The refrain uses the term Adonai Tzvaot, okay? In fact, you probably know this term because it's Adonai Tzvaot Imano Mizgavlano Elohei Yaakov Sela, right? That pops up in liturgy. We'll talk about it when we get there. But Adonai Tzvaot, Lord of Hosts, presuming to talk about the heavenly entourage that is with God. Some would say it's also the heavenly host of stars, one or the other or both. But it's the tzvaot is not a tzava can be an army down here, but tzvaot with Adonai is talking about the folks upstairs. So that's what that is. All right. But Adonai tzvaot is a trope. It is a very commonly used term in the Bible. It represents, if I'm trying to think, more than half or close to half of the references to the word tzava in the Bible. It is found 250 times, Adonai tzvaot. So that gives you a clear sense of one of the important ways in which biblical authors viewed God. All right, and remember, in classical biblical, what shall we call it, astronomy, metaphysics, God is not in the heavens that we see at night. That is below the firmament, okay? Those stars are in the firmament. And why is it called firmament? Because it's a hard thing, right? It's like a piece of plexiglass, okay? But beyond that is the highest heavens, Shamayim Mima'al, and that's where God and the Tzava and his entourage exist. So that's how the Bible views the heavens, okay? So, fine. All right, so God is our strength and protection. Okay, moving on. Verse 3. Al-Kain lo nira. Therefore we will not be afraid. Behamir Eretz. Behamir Aretz. Uvamot Harim. Belev Yamim. Again, Al-Kain lo nira. Behamir Aretz. Uvamot Harim. Belev Yamim. All right. So these are important words because we will see that a number of these words are part of a word structuring. And now we're going to look at that, something we always look at, and that's going to be a very important part of how the poem operates as a poem. All right, so we will not be afraid, behamir, or we will not fear, actually. We shall not fear, though the earth reels, okay? Behamir aretz, the earth reels. Okay, what does to reel mean? R-E-L.
To fall down or fall over suddenly.
No, to shake. To shake, almost fall down, but not
both
quite.
right. It means, yeah. Here it means, just as I'm quoting from the dictionary, lurch violently. Okay? Yes. So what is that talking about? The earth lurches violently. What type of
earthquake?
Like what we feel when we have an earthquake, yeah.
Exactly. It's an earthquake. And I remember when Avi and Sharon were first married, they were living in Tel Aviv, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and there was an earthquake. It wasn't a bad one, but it woke them up. So Sharon is lying in bed, yelling and screaming. Avi's lying there with her, yawning. He said, "Don't worry." He says, "It'll be over soon. We can go back to sleep." She says, "What? We can't go back to sleep. This is crazy. We're going to die." She's from London. They don't know of earthquakes in London. Avi's from Los Angeles. He says, "Whoopee-doo."
That's what happened with my house when you came for dinner one night with a whole big group of people.
Right. You're right. Yes. Right. So it's like in the World LA story, right? They're in the restaurant, the earth is shaking, things are moving, and then they just continue, no, nothing. All right. Anyhow. So that's one. But that doesn't make us afraid, right? He doesn't make us afraid. Uvamot harim, and when mountains collapse, wow, that's really. I mean, I've never seen a mountain collapse.
Have you been across Topanga recently?
Where?
Topanga Canyon Boulevard, the mudslides. But
but that's still there.
No, I know. This reminds me of a volcano.
Well, I remember Mount St. Helens very clearly. That's my part of the world.
Yeah, I'm thinking volcano.
It could be, right? The mountain, it looks like it's collapsing, right? But look what it says though. Mountains collapse in the heart of the seas. Belev yamim. Uvamot harim belev yamim. You hear the poetry? V'mot harim belev yamim.
It's more common that we have earth pushed up than earth just falling over and toppling. Yes, we have volcanoes like Mount St. Helens, and that was amazing.
Right.
But there's actually in the paper 2 days ago, there's an area down in Rancho Palos Verdes on the ocean where the beach is being pushed up. Unknown reasons why it's going higher, but it's not the same beach today that it was a month ago.
That's very interesting.
If you've seen the volcanoes in Hawaii, going down into the sea, the lava, and the next line, the water's raging in foam.
Yes,
that happens when the lava hits the water.
Yes, that's a very good idea. That's a very good concept. Thank you. It's very possible. Except in Eretz Israel,
there's no volcanoes.
There are. I mean, no. I mean, the Harei Levanon are volcanoes, but they ain't near the sea. Now,
that's right.
This could be some part of. I mean, maybe one of those volcanoes had a horrible eruption at some point in ancient history, and it actually reached the sea. I don't know. I know that one of them is in the direction of the sea, but I don't know the distance between there and the sea. Anyway, but the point is, it's possible that something like this happened in the deep, dark history, of that area, and it transferred forward. or it could simply have been part of his poetic imagination, because it's sort of the opposite, of the rigidity, the power of the mountains. Remember, mountains are used; they are symbols of strength, right? And what this is saying is that God controls all this stuff, and in the presence of God's power, a mountain could just fall apart and go into the ocean. Okay, I mean, they believed, for example, that the firmament rested on the top of mountains. Now that worked in some places, in other ones it didn't, clearly. But the places who believed this, like for example, in Mesopotamia, where you have places of wide valleys with mountains on either side, what does it look like? You look up at the sky, right? That blue sky is the firmament. Well, where does it rest? Just visually, on the top of the mountains, right? And that's what they believed. So mountains were real strong things. But here what this is saying is, well, it's a big deal. All these mountains, fine, it's no biggie. God's with us. We're here. He'll take care of us. He controls all this stuff. All right? Even all this happens. And then it goes on in verse 4. By the way, yeah, I was going to say, I think I intimated that Israel is known for its earthquakes. The prophet Amos refers to Shnatayim Machareha Ra'ash, 2 years after the earthquake. So that tells us that at some point in the 8th century, in the mid-8th century BCE, there was an earthquake. And we know that at some point, I thought it was 6th, 7th century CE, there was an earthquake, and a lot of buildings came down.
Isn't there a big fault that runs into Israel?
No, it runs right next to it. The
River
Valley.
But near there.
The Jordan River Valley is part, I think that's called the Syrio-Egyptian fault. I mean, basically it runs, that system runs from the far north all the way down south. So that's why it's not a surprise to see earthquake. Remember, you find references to an earthquake. Read when Elijah's on Mount Sinai, there was an earthquake, right? Marion.
Well, and I was going to say before you said that too, but also that this is also written by Korach's people, and the earth swallowed them up.
Oh.
So I don't know, is that an earthquake or is that something else? But it's related to the fact that these are, that's fresh in their minds.
Yes, well, that's possible. I mean, that would be a family tradition, to be sure.
Right.
Right? I mean, this is obviously, we're talking here something that was written centuries after, whenever.
Right. But I'm just saying that whole thing it's in their DNA.
Yes, their cultural DNA. Yes, absolutely. That's great. I hadn't thought about that. I like that. Oh, you get to go today. You get 5 points.
Oh, they're very useful.
Yes.
Well, Korach is my birth portion, so to be a little bit more, I've looked at it more carefully, and it's more front and center because it was last week. So.
Yes, that's very good. Very, very good. Right. Yes. So these are, one way or another, you can see these are things that these people were aware of. But I want you to listen to the sounds here. Okay. So you have Nira, Hamir, Harim, Yamim, Hamir, Harim, Yamim, sounds, okay? And the sounds are going to continue in a different sense in the next verse, okay? So it says, Yehemu yechmeru meimav, Yirashu harim begavato sela. Yehemu yechmeru. You hear it? Yehemu yechmeru, okay? That means, again, Yahom Hey, which means that this is raging, and referring to the water, to the sea, right? The raging waters, Foaming waters, Yechmeru. Chet Memresh means to foam. Meimav, it's waters. Okay, the waters of the sea. And then Ra'ashu Harima, here it is again. Earthquakes are shaking, right? They're quaking. Begava Tosela. Gava here is something interesting. It doesn't mean pride. I mean, elsewhere it does. But here it means roaring. It's a sound, okay? So the sound of the sound of the earthquake, the sound that's, earthquakes are associated with sound. So that's all part of this thing, the sound of this ra'ash that hits the mountains. And here too, you have the sound, yehamu, yechmeru, and then once again, harim, popping up again, harim in both verses. Okay, so, and you'll see later on the word mot, okay, mem, vav, tet, is going to pop up. And those are words, so the repetition here shows us connectedness between the various passages. Marcy.
I know we're going back between waters and mountains, but when you get to these sounds, it connects me to Rish Rush Shel Hamayim.
Yes.
There's that, it's kind of like you're hearing it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's real onomatopoeia, right?
Yeah.
The tintinnabulation of the bells, that famous one, right? Yes, exactly. Sure. Right. Very good. And rage will come back again later on in verse 7. Yeah, well, that same verb. Okay. By the way, ga'ava can also mean arrogance. Okay. And it's associated with an increase in sound. All right. I'm just picking that up from the Curler Baumgartner. So very interesting. All right. So then but then here it concludes, Sela. All right. After we hear about the waters raging and foaming, the mountains quake in its noise, its swelling, the swelling noise, the increasing noise of the earthquake. Sela. What does the Sela mean? Pause.
Period.
Oh, here it means semicolon.
Oh, semicolon. Okay.
Yes, here it's going to mean semicolon. We'll see a period later on, right? The two refrains are periods. I have a parallel here because right away you're going to see with the words in the next verse. Not here, next verse, no. But you'll see the next verse contrasts something with what came before. And it's very interesting to theorize about this. All right. So the Sela here is a semicolon. All right. Then now it continues, verse 5. Nahar plagav yisamchu ir Elohim, kadosh mishkanei elyon. Okay. There is a river whose streams gladden God's city, the holy dwelling of the Most High. All right. So we assume this is talking about Jerusalem. Okay, that's the only town, unless you want to talk about Beit El, which is one of the other shrine cities. But we're assuming, given the overall picture here. Yes, no, we'll see in a moment. There's an
Why would the streams gladden the city?
Well, because it provides water. But now here's the comparison, though. Hold on. The water we mentioned before was the roaring, powerful, threatening sea, right? And here we're now talking about a river whose tributaries cause rejoicing, in other words, provide life-sustaining water for the city. So it's an intentional contrast. But the problem is, what is the river that flows through Jerusalem?
I don't know.
Are we talking about the ground tunnels?
Hezekiah's Tunnel River? Siloam?
Thought. Hold on. Hold that thought. Okay? Hold that thought. Hezekiah's tunnel, basically what he did was he diverted water that came out of a well, flowing water out from underneath, diverted it into the city so that the city could have water in case of siege or drought. And it was a significant advancement for the city and its strength. Yes. So one wonders. I mean, people have theorized that and thrown it out because that's not a real river, but it could be a metaphor for that, and intentionally stating it in contrast to the waters we saw before, right? Those were threatening waters that, God basically is managing all that stuff. And we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about it because God is there for us. So let those natural phenomena go. Fine. That's how God set it up. Let it go. We're not worried. The contrast now is this quiet, life-giving water that causes Jerusalem to rejoice. Okay? It causes Jerusalem to rejoice. And what is this? This is the holy dwelling of the Most High. So it should be rejoicing. So yes, Yeshakoach, the two of you each get 2.5 points. You're splitting the 5. Okay. All right. Tybal, you had your hand up. Was it this?
Sorry. Anna missed it. The 3 lower level holy cities of Hebron, Svat, and Tiberias, are those rabbinic holy level cities, or is it even later than rabbinic?
Say again.
I thought there was this notion that there are 4 holy cities in the land of Israel. The highest one is Jerusalem, and then a step down are Hebron, Svat, and Tiberias. I know that's not biblical.
That's later.
Is it rabbinic or even later than rabbinic?
Well, Svat didn't become an important place until the later Middle Ages.
Oh, so it's much, much later then. It's not even rabbinic.
Right. No, but Tiberias, Tveria was already an important city in late rabbinic times because that's where the Beit Din met in Eretz Yisrael. So that had the holy Hebron was, that's already biblical because that's where Machpelah is. So, I mean, there was the holiness of those cities sort of evolved, though, I would say, over the centuries. But the structure, but here this is presumably earlier. Now, the point is, if this is indeed Hezekiah, right? If it's post Hezekiah, then it can help us understand something that's following in the next few verses, right? Hezekiah built that sometime before 700 BCE, all right? Sometime toward the latter part of the 8th century BCE. And as we said, it was very, very significant. So it was effectively like the equivalent of a river. And it's this notion, it streams, this presumably it fed into a number of different pipes, and it was there. It was available for use by the community. And Jerusalem wasn't as big as it is now either. Basically, you're talking about Ir David, okay? So it's, it was much more circumspect. Okay. Now, so keep Hezekiah in mind when we read the next line, which is verse 6, I'm sorry. We're now, by the way, we now have transitioned into part B of great part 1, right? We're now in the second part. But here again, look at the words. So it says, first of all, this is Ir Elohim. So once again, we have Elohim. Elohim B'kirba, God is in its midst. Baal Timot, there's that term again, Mem, Vav, Tet, which we saw earlier. Yazra Elohim, we talked about Ezra, right? In verse 2. Elohim, Lifnot Boker, right? by daybreak. In other words, immediately. And remember, before we mentioned that God is available when Nitzah. He's there, always. He's always there. And here too, there's a time factor built in here, which is he's there from the early morning. He's ready to go. Okay, so I see your hand. Hold on. So, point being, these words of crumbling, helping, Ezra, right? Elohim. This is a carryover. These are key words from the first part of the poem, which would indicate that this is all. These are the connectors, and that's why I said the first selah is a semicolon and not a period. And that's why when we come to the refrain, that will be the period, and you'll see how that works. Okay. All right. So, Vered.
Wanted to comment about Lifnot Boker.
Yeah.
Which means, the way I understand it, it's not necessarily talking about timing of early morning, but in Yeshayahu, Lifnot Boker, this concept is a symbol of salvation, that the salvation will come, not necessarily Yazreha Elohim, salvation, meaning God will help and there will be salvation. It's not that it's going to be early morning. I mean, you can translate it literally. Why dafka lifnot boker?
Yeah.
So this is how I want to translate.
Where is it found in Yeshayahu?
I'll tell you. It's found in Perek. Let me see, because I wrote it down. Perek Tet, Pasuk Aleph.
Mona.
What you said must your dog. Is that your dog?
Yeah, I'm just cutting it up.
Whose dog is it? Oh, see, doesn't your dog want the salvation to come? I mean, you better be training.
Because morning and light are salvation, are translated as a metaphor for salvation.
Let me see. It could be, but I don't know that fits in here. Not yet. Maybe. It could be. Yeah, Lifnot Boker. I mean, here it's by daybreak. Okay. Hold on, I'm getting there. 9:1.
Actually, Metzudat David agrees with Vered because it says,
yes, I know.
Yishkon Bekerev Yerushalayim, yeah.
Yeah, but remember these, hold on. Right, well, no, it's here. If you look at the whole verse, though, it's clearly that has that futuristic redemptive tone to it. But this is not the case, right? Because here, look, Ha'ama Olchim B'choshech Ra'u Or Gadol Yoshev Ve'eretz Salmavet Or Naga Aleihem, right? Lu higdalti hasimcha samchu lefanecha kesimchat hachatzir kasher yagilu. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Where's Lifnot Boker? You said 9:1.
It doesn't matter, Rabbi. You can translate it this way, and you can translate it this way.
No. Where's Lifnot Boker? I'm just looking for the words. Ha'am ha'holchim b'choshech ra'u or gadol yoshvei ba'aretz salmavet or naga aleihem. You're baiting?
The light, like the first light, touch them or shine upon them.
Yeah, but that is different from here. This Lifnot Boker is talking about early, and it's not this. Yeah, 9:1 is not talking about a chronological time, but indeed you're right. That is a salvation time. But Lifnot Boker here means that even before the sun comes up, God's already doing His thing, and that is on a more natural. That's not I thought that maybe this would have a clear, what shall we say? I'm looking for the word. Oh, it just left my head. End of days, messianic thrust to it, but it doesn't happen here. Later on, it might at the end. So I can't dismiss what you're saying completely, but I think it is something that sort of, look, when you're describing God this way, what you're saying is, here, what this strikes me more is what, the rabbis taught after the destruction after the temple. Bin laila yibaneh hamikdash. What does that mean? Overnight, the temple will be rebuilt. In other words, it will be a sudden thing, a surprising thing. And it'll happen like this. Now, some suggest that it was said that way because that shows that that's part of the miracle of the Messianic age, right? That's what that is. There are others who push that because they did not want, people to doche kaketz. You shouldn't push the Messianic idea because it can lead to all kinds of mishigas, which we know happens. It has happened numerous times in our history. In some respects, we see it today. I saw it in New York. I think I told you when I was walking down one of the streets, and it was said, the Rebbe's coming, So that kind of Messianic mishigas comes from people who push the Messianic end. But here I'm saying it captures, I think, what it does do, and I'm serious about this. It captures the immediacy of it. In other words, God can do this, boom, right? Whatever it's going to be, but he can do it, boom. So it's a hopeful, let's say, quasi messianic type of a thing, and it could allude. Okay, so I can't dismiss it completely. I can't. Okay, yes, Leon.
I find that you kind of agree with even Ezra. Well, Rashi agrees with Vered, because Rashi says, as morning approaches at the end of redemption. But also, it's good that you mentioned the Rebbe, because today is the 30th anniversary of his death.
Oh, is there still a police guard around his grave?
That I don't know. I just got a message from Chabad.
Let's ask Senator Cory Booker.
What?
Let's ask Senator Cory Booker.
Well,
who goes to the grave? Senator Cory Booker goes to the grave for inspiration. Non-Jewish Senator Cory Booker. I find that inspiring.
Okay.
There's rabbis that are going on the 30th day, so I guess that's tomorrow, to make blessings and do Misha Barracks for people like myself.
All right. So I'm going to shoot it all down now in one hand.
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you know why the police have 24-hour guards at the Rebbe's grave? Because he's received death threats. That note, I'm going to take my pill.
Did you hear that, Gabby?
While you're taking your pills, I take by daybreak metaphorically, because what is daybreak? It is the time that comes after the darkness.
Yes.
And so as I read this line, by daybreak, when the darkness clears, God will come to its aid. That was kind of a metaphoric take on by daybreak, God will come to its aid.
Yeah, it could be, but
But I don't think they're contradictory, because, we have the situation at the end of the year with Adam, when he saw the end of the year approaching and the days becoming shorter and shorter and shorter, and he was afraid that the end of everything would come. And suddenly there was a bit of light from, after December 31st. And so he had a big celebration because, maybe it's just cyclical. So, there is a fear of darkness, and this talks about the fear of darkness of being overcome by God, with the aid of God.
Yeah, but except he doesn't go into Darkness is not mentioned anywhere in this.
No, but daybreak is what happens after darkness.
We kind of have to bring the metaphor backwards.
Right. By its very nature, daybreak is what ends darkness.
Right. But it's, yes, 1 second. Daybreak, according to Chazal, but this is pre-Chazal, is not sunrise. It's Alot Amud HaShachar.
Amud HaShachar.
Right, which is a star. Okay.
Oh, I thought it was the first glimmering of light.
Daybreak is at the first coloration on the horizon of the coming of the sun. Right. So yes, it's a line that demarcates darkness from the beginning of light. Yeah.
Correct.
But that's why, I'm more comfortable. I hear everybody, and I think we're all basically on the same page. But again, it means that God is so eager, so ready, to help. Because remember, right? God is helping. It comes after Ya'azreha. God will help her, meaning the city, not us. God will help the city as soon as, even before the sun comes up, which is a sign of desire, because it's the city. It doesn't say us, the city.
So now we're going back to, kol hayom vekol halayla, shomrim.
Yeah. But this is a little bit different. This is the point. I mean, you could say what God doesn't guard us at night. I don't think that, I'm sure the author wouldn't disagree, right? But the point is, that's why I said it's a symbol of God being, it's like when Abraham gets up in the morning and prepares for the Akedah, right?
Yeah.
He gets up early and he's so eager. He's so, and he's so committed to doing this. I think that's what this is saying. It's like Abraham.
Hineni.
Yeah. He's ready to go. Yeah, that's what I sort of think. All right. Now let's keep Hezekiah in mind, Chizkiyahu. All right. So the city will not be shaken. The city will not be toppled, because God is ready Johnny on the spot to make sure that it's not going to happen. It's also when you besiege a city, when you attack, you usually wait until the sun starts coming up so you can see what you're doing. So it could be also, and that is mine as well. But let's move on. Here, Hamu goyim matu. All right, there it is again. That same verb, mot. So you see, these terms are being carried over now. The water imagery, there was mot in verse 6, and again mot in matu. They topple in verse 7.
Matu.
Or earlier, before the split, right? And so there it is again, okay? Natan v'kolo ta'amug eretz, okay? And when the sound of his voice, when he raises his voice, the earth dissolves. We had notions earlier, right? Of the sound, right? It was the sound of the waves, right? The swelling of the waves. But here we're back to that notion again, the voice and of the earth dissolving, right? And this is what we saw before, the mountains dissolving. It's a different word, but the images are all the same. So that's why I'm saying, remember I said early on, the second part is connected to the first part. You've got imagery and you've got words. So this is one contiguous thing, except before God was dealing with nature. Now God is dealing with history. He's talking about Jerusalem, and he's talking about the nations raging, right? Hamu goyim, hamu, there's that word before. We saw it before. They're raging. They're yelling, they're going out of their minds, and their kingdoms are falling because of the sound of God's thunder. Kol, right? That's like the kol on Sinai. Okay, just hold on a second, Marcy. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
And then the sound of his thunder. So let me just talk about the historical thing here for a moment. It is suggested that this could be an allusion to what did happen in Jerusalem when the armies of Sancherib attacked in 701, and they surrounded the city, and then suddenly, overnight, they left. Now, that's what the Bible says, okay? So let's translate that into reality. It probably happened because there's no evidence thereafter that Jerusalem had any kind of loss of population or any major destructions. Towns surrounding Jerusalem were taken. The most famous one is Lachish, which is a major town southwest of Jerusalem. Okay? And Lachish you can commemorate by sitting and visiting in the British Museum, because they actually have they cut out the part of Ashurbanipal's palace that was built a little bit later, but there is a relief in huge blocks of the
Assyrians. They have a picture of it.
Taking the Israel, the Judah, Lachish people, the soldiers, away. And they're dressed differently. They sort of look, their style's different. And there it is. It's part of the European rape of the Middle East with all of its archaeological wonders. All right, but there it is. So the point is that never happened at that time to Jerusalem. There's no record of it anywhere, not even in Assyrian. Believe me, if they would have taken the city, you would have had a lot of write-ups about that in the Assyrian records, because that would have been a big deal. It was a temple city. Nothing. So that it is suggested there, it is suggested based upon word repetition, because there are terms here that you can find in Isaiah, who was the king, who was the prophet at the time that all that happened. In fact, he had first predicted that Jerusalem would fall, but it didn't. Anyhow, so there are terms, and there's this notion, it is suggested that the immediate response to that was God saved the city. In their eyes, and the fact that the way the Bible records it, that in the morning they just suddenly were gone, right? What most historians say, that there was a need for these troops elsewhere in a more important area, in the north, probably had them heading back up to deal with some other elements up there that were causing them. It was the beginning of the crumbling of their empire. Ironically, they captured cities in Judah, but soon thereafter their empire began to start to fall. Anyhow, so the point is, the tradition that's reflected here saw that as a miraculous act of God, and that's what's reflected here. Okay, of the sudden, right? God went bah, and the earth crumbled, right? The same way that the kingdom collapsed. And it could be maybe even later, when maybe decades later, when the actual reporting of the collapse of the Assyrian Empire, which didn't happen overnight, right? It was step by step by step. There were Medes, there were Babylonians. I did a little reading on that. It took the formal fall of whatchamacallit, the Assyrian capital, Nineveh, to the Babylonians was 616 BCE, and thereafter other elements fell. They tried to make the Assyrians called Egypt up, and there were Egyptian troops that went up and helped they were sent up, and in Eretz Israel in the north, 609, one of those Egyptian garrisons was heading up to help the Assyrians, north of Eretz Israel. And Josiah had his army try to stop the Egyptians, okay, because they were in line, or he was already in cahoots with the Babylonians. They hated the Assyrians. Well, the Egyptians beat him and killed Josiah, 609. But there was a defeat that occurred there. Another element of the Babylonian conquest. Even, in other words, after 609, there was another battle that they won. So gradually, by the time Nebuchadnezzar in 597 is coming south, he took Jerusalem because they basically neutralized the Assyrians. Okay, the Babylonians neutralized the Assyrians with the help of the Medes, the Medians, who were, their empire was further east from Babylonia. So now the big problem was Egypt. Egypt was the problem. So that's why you wonder, why did suddenly Babel put pressure on the king of Jerusalem and ultimately take the city? Because they needed it. It was a high up city on a mountain, easily, relatively defensible, great place to have a garrison, right? Because who's south of Eretz Israel? Egypt. So it fit in with their plans. Anyhow, but at this point in time, the fall of the Assyrian Empire was in progress. So it's very possible that this line, right, which talks about the nations raging and kingdoms toppling, right? The Hebrew matu mamlachot. Okay, that could be this change that's taking place that leads between 700 and 600 BCE. And it could be that this is all being interpreted as God's activity by the author of the Psalm. And if that's true, then a lot of things happen. So the point I see, don't worry, Marcia, I haven't forgotten about you. So with the point, what emerges from this is God can control the master. God can protect us from how he manages the powerful control of nature. Nature is violent. That's the way it operates. Okay. And it can be. And they experience that, right? Earthquake. They know from those things. Nature can be violent, but God shields us from that. He protects us. Okay. Human beings, armies, kingdoms can be violent, but God protects us and protects his holy city. He did in 701. Nothing happened in Jerusalem. Okay. And there was a stream, shall we say. There was water. God protects. Okay. Marcy.
I just wanted to go back to the word tamug. Is that related to Yoshua? Yoshua, we have namogu.
Namogu means
inhabitants are quaking or dissolving in their...
Yeah, they're dissolving, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if grammatically this works, but when it says tamug aretz, could it be referring to the people of the land?
Where are you?
Where we were in Pasuk Zayin.
Tamug, verse 7. I'm sorry.
Could it be referring to...
Yeah. Dissolve, yeah.
The people, as opposed to the land physically dissolving?
This is the land. No. Tan kolo, tamug aretz.
Aretz can't be like an inclusive speaking of the people of the world.
Yeah, no, but I mean the world. Oh, you mean the whole world? The world fell apart?
Well, I mean, just this idea that God's voice causes people to lose their... I mean, that's a theme we have too, that we...
Oh, I see what you're... Yeah, I understand now. Right.
That people kind of become fearful when they hear of what God has done for Bnei Israel. We have it also, that same kind of an idea with Yitro, that, that they've heard what God did in Egypt. And so I'm wondering if it's possible that it could mean not that the earth is physically dissolving, although that fits in very well.
What it's saying, yeah.
I'm just wondering if it's also people's resolve against Israel is also.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
The way it's. I mean, looking at the translations, they both say dissolves.
Right.
The earth. It could be that they're just recapturing the naturalistic element that was in the first part, and saying that this is all part of the same package.
Right.
That's the same way that he causes, he can cause mountains to fall. He can cause kingdoms to fall.
Right.
And he can cause the earth to fall apart. It could be like the earth falls apart under their feet. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's all a statement of divine power.
Right.
All a statement. And that's why this is all Elohim.
And in nature and in the geopolitical realm as well.
Right. So the refrain is what I mentioned before. Now look carefully. Adonai Tzvaot Imanu, right? The Lord, the God of hosts, and it's the Adonai who's the ruler of the heavenly host, is with us. Mizgav lanu Elohei Yaakov, and the God of Jacob is our refuge. So this is like the same word in verse 2 that we began with. Right? Right, as a refuge. So here we have another refuge. This time it's Mizgav. Okay? So if you divide the line into two parts, Adonai Tzvaot Imanu, Mizgav lanu Elohei Yaakov, which is how it's supposed to be done. All right, the tropes indicate that as well. Okay? So Adonai is with us, and Elohim is our refuge. So it's essentially saying that God is with us with both aspects of his presence. When you say Imanu, this is more relational, right? He's with us. And the offshoot of that is more protective. He's our refuge. So I want Adonai to be with me in the sense that's the part of God that has feeling. Whereas I want Elohim to be my refuge because that's the God of strength. Okay. And by the way, it's very interesting if you look at the flood stories, right? Remember, there's two flood stories. The one that is the J tradition, where the four-letter name of God is what dominates, that's where God has emotions. He's pained by what has happened. He regrets that he made the earth. Literally, he regrets. Vayinachem Hashem doesn't mean he was compassionate. He had a change of heart, right? Whereas the P tradition just says the world was corrupt. No mention of how God felt. So I want the feeling God to be with me because I like that personal presence. Remember, that's the God of chapter 2 of Genesis. Elohim is the power, the God of power who controls nature, created everything, right? That aspect of God. So that's what I think what the refrain is about. And in a sense, it draws together the two elements, the human side, right? History is human, right? History is the people side. The power is with nature, right? God doesn't have emotional attachments to nature. He controls, but he has personal attachments to us. And we're part of history. Nature is part of natural history. We're part of human history. And so it's like it brings the two together, the two significant attributes of the one God. And that may be the reason why there are two creation stories. I mean, bottom line, and that this is the, from time to time, the biblical authors need to sort of address these seemingly contradictory elements by bringing them together and saying, no, there's no contradiction. It depends upon the role that God has to play, right? Like you can say, think about a human being. There are times when we have to be just cold and analytical and, right? I mean, if I'm a doctor, let's say, and I'm dealing with a disease, I'm a surgeon, right? I got to watch that my emotions don't get the better part of me. I have to be precise in my timing, what I'm doing, because this life is in front of me. I got to just deal with it. And then he goes home, and suddenly he's this loving, caring, thank God I'm home, I'm with the kids. He picks them up, he plays with them, he hugs them, he kisses them. Same guy, but he's got two different sides, probably more than two, right? So God has gazillion attributes, right? And so it's the bringing them together, as we see here, is another statement of the complexity of the one God. But in this case, they're both positive. In both instances, we are protected from the threat of nature, and we are protected from the threat of human beings. Hooray for us. Okay. Bert.
Is there any significance to the fact it doesn't say Mizgavlanu Elohim, and it says Elohei Yaakov, which is different?
Well, no.
It's the God of Jacob, but it's a connection with our ancestors' God as opposed to Elohim in general.
Yeah, no, I would say that emphasize. I mean, remember, he's Elohei. Sometimes he's Elohei Yaakov, Israel. I mean, he can, but it means the God of it. It is part of the relationship that God has with us, because it is our relationship with us which is the reason why we don't have to fear nature, and why we don't have to fear he can be a refuge to us. From whom? From nature and from people, right? Because he is Elohei. He can be Elohei Abraham, but they chose Yaakov because Yaakov and Yisrael are both two terms that define the whole people. Beit Yaakov, right? Bnei Yisrael, right? So this is the peoplehood, the covenant, the brit. Whereas Adonai Tzvaot, right? Adonai Tzvaot is, now that's a natural, you could say it's a naturalistic, connection, because it's the host. But this tremendous power is Imanu, is with us. And it's not, there's a hint of the covenant, to be sure. All I'm saying is the word Adonai has a certain tone to it. And the word, Elohim, whether it's Elohei, has a different one. But I think it's covenant. The God of Israel, the God of Jacob. All right? Think of the Amidah. First blessing. Elohei Abraham, Yaakov, Rachel, Leah. Those were the relationships that shaped the relationship with the people. I think that's part of it. And that's us. We're Beit Yaakov. Okay? All right. But now, any other questions? Yes, Leon.
Well, it just, to me, it sounded a little funny because it's Adonai Tzevaot, which is Lord of Hosts. I always thought that hosts here means armies, Imanu. On the other hand, Elohei Yaakov, where Elohei is the God of power, is Elohei Yaakov, the God who is related to us through tradition. And they seem slightly different than the God of caring versus the God of power. They seem to be used differently here than in other places.
Oh, I'm saying, but I'm saying the word, for me, the first one, the key, Imanu. Imanu is the word. He's with us. See, that's presence. That's how I interpret. That word is the key word for me.
Uh-huh. Well, for me, it was Tzevaot.
In other words, that great God up there is right here with us. Okay, think of the Mishkan. right? The Mishkan. He's right there.
Yeah.
That's the God who created the world. But God was using other powers to create the world. Unless you can, the rabbis say, right, that God did both, right? He had to do both. They gave precedence to Rachmanut. So, that was Adonai. That's why it says Adonai Elohim, right? So, I mean, you can take it different. I was focusing on Imanu. Okay, yes, Barbara.
I thought that Tzvaot was referring to the angels up above.
Yeah, it could be. I mean,
not just, like the army of angels kind of, but not just to the army, the Israeli army.
That's the point, is it doesn't necessarily mean an army per se.
Yeah.
It means a group of people who are who are working together for something.
I thought it was like his people that are helping him.
Yeah, well, look, it depends upon who you want to read at what period in Jewish history. What do the angels do? I mean, if you read some texts, they stand up there and all they do all day long is praise God. Hallelujah. Kodesh, Kodesh, Kadosh, 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 and I suppose over and over and over again. Okay. That's what. Huh? Right, exactly. Up there and down here too. Right. But you're up there. Okay. So, yeah. But on the other end, it can be at Tzava. But normally you don't see that. I don't think you use Tzava. It may be used sometimes in meaning armies. But and it probably does. But when it comes to, it means the higher host of people with whom God is surrounded. God doesn't need anybody to protect God, so they're not protecting him. They're just up there, praising him. God loves to hear their music, Okay, moving on. So we've now finished the first part. We can see the connectedness, the dual thrust of nature and God of nature, God of history. Okay. However, we're going to see something right now that is really important. Now we're going to move to the final 4 verses. And let's see, where are we on time? Oh, we're pretty good. We may be able to finish soon, around 9 o'clock. Okay. All right. So first of all, as I said, the key words that we talked about in verses 1 to 8 are not found here. Okay. And the themes, they're similar, we'll see, but with some different twists to them. Okay. So now, but having said everything we just said, look what pops up. Verse 9. L'chu chazu mif'alot Adonai asher sam shamot ba'aretz. Go and look the deeds that God has done. How he made the earth desolate. Right. Adonai made the earth desolate. I thought Adonai was a God of love.
I say that's not very nice of God.
Right? This seems to contradict, I mean,
sounds that again.
Elohim controls nature. Adonai does this. Adonai can be destructive. I thought Adonai was Rachamim, the soft side, the loving side, the caring side. Okay. Well, so Rabbi Moshe Alshich was a teacher, a commentator on the Bible, and he operated in the mystical. He moved from the Ottoman Empire into another part of it, went to Tzfat, all right, in the middle of the 16th century. And Chaim Vital, who was disciple of the Ari, and who compiled his teachings, was one of the students that studied with Alshich. So he's a very interesting Bible scholar, very deep, and quasi-mystical as well. But the point is he always has long comments. Anyhow, so he addresses the issue, okay? He addresses the issue, and he says, you probably were going to say, how could God bring desolation when this is the God of compassion, right? This is the God, Adonai refers to God's passionate side. Why would that be? It's such horrific activity. And so he says, you forgot that God got angry at the flood, and out of his anger came the flood. And there he quotes numerous statements in the Bible, a number of them, where Adonai does nasty things. And so he says his compassion is not absolute. You might say it's the dominant factor in how he operates, but it's not absolute, and his compassion is not absolutely compassionate. Sometimes there's times when you gotta be angry and desolate and do things like that. Okay? And it's similar to what we read earlier, just using a different term. Shamot is related to shmama, right? That whole structure of verb that deals with desolation, desert, and destruction, and stuff like that. Okay? So, let me just finish. Hold on. So he's right, because again, I see your hand, Miriam. What is the passage the most famous passage that defines God's compassion? Right? Say it.
El Rachum Rechanun.
Adonai V'Chanun. Erech Apayim.
Rav Chesed V'Emet.
Notzer Chesed La'alafim. Nosei Avon V'Pesha V'Chata V'Nakeh. Right? The 13 attributes of God's compassion. That which everybody points to.
But keep on going.
Okay, Avon Avot. Al Banim Ve'al Shileshim Ve'al Ribeim. Ad Dorvi. Right? He visits the sons of the fathers upon the children to the
third and fourth generation.
Now he preserved, he passes forth the chesed to the 1,000th generation. La'ohavai b'shomrei mitzvotai. Right? To people who love me, follow my commandments. But if you're bad, it's going to be passed down. So he does punish. Now, Alshik doesn't mention this, but you can see it's operating in the back of his mind. And I felt like telling him, why didn't you put down that line? Come on, you were a mystic. You know that because of that, the Zohar splits two different kinds of compassion. The earthly compassion, there is punishment. The heavenly compassion is pure compassion. And that's Mi'el Kamocha from the prophet. You read it on Shabbat Shuvah, and you read it when you do Tashlich. That's another according to the Zohar. Those are 13 attributes of pure compassion. That's the higher compassion. But the 13 attributes that we use on the high holidays down here, that's the lower one. And Rambam, you should know. You know what the 13th element of God's compassion is? If you read it, this is in the Moreh Nevuchim, he writes it. The number 13 is Pokei Avon Avot. Punishment is part of the process of Maimonides' concept of compassion. Because there are times when you have to punish. And you have to see that as being a legitimate part of how God operates. Balance. Remember, he's in favor of the golden mean. Balance. So he even includes that. Isn't that interesting? So Alshich may be right. Or it just may simply be that the guy here is not really, well, maybe he is, though. I don't know. Maybe he is. Or maybe he's just carrying over Adonai from the refrain and linking it up to what follows now. Because you're going to see in a moment, Elohim will pop back. All right, we'll get to that in a second. Marion Klein.
So I don't know where this fits in, but it might be this whole thing of tough love, the idea that there is no pure in the way it looks compassion. It's just 100%. Let's put it that way.
Yes. No,
it's not just that it's balanced with the punishment, but that actually there is no such thing in some ways as pure compassion, even though we're looking for pure loving kindness, chesed, and everything with the tree of life. And it's like, it's there, but it's not. It's like almost saying that there really is no such thing as this.
Yeah, you're right. Look, I mean, in a sense, you can make the point that by punishing in a fitting punishment, which seems not to be compassionate, may ultimately end up in a place of compassion, in the sense because you may have had an impact on being punished.
Yeah, and I like to use the word consequence anyway. I mean, punishment, I don't know what the Hebrew is there. I'm unfortunately not in the Hebrew, but it's like, to me, I think of consequences more than I think of punishment. And that softens it on some level, but it also, it's like, it doesn't feel like the wrathful God, especially with, you're talking about, Adonai, you're talking about that. It's not, then it ends up being more of a compassionate God rather than a tyrannical God.
No, you're right. I mean, the point is that the Torah deals with punishments. There's no question. The Torah deals with punishments, and consequences are significant. But what I'm trying to say is, a person who would try to point to, to look at the notion of compassion, as you said, tough love, right? I mean, that concept really means that I'm ultimately doing this for your benefit, because by doing this, I'm hoping that I can somehow affect a kind of a behavior change in you. I've tried other things. It's like going cold turkey when you've been on drugs. At a certain point, you've got to go through that miserable process. I mean, I wouldn't know what it's like because I never have done drugs. The only drugs I take is what I get from my doctor, That's what I took before, my drugs. Anyway, but the point there is, you've got to go through that hell, hopefully, to give you a sense of how you should be. And, if you can come out of it, then you can proceed. And that's tough love, and the hope being, it's a compassionate long-term thing. And so, you're right. There's no question. I mean, that's the whole point. That's, I think, why Rembaum includes that as the 13th element of divine compassion. There are points when consequences have to be felt. Wait, Marin, you're silent. You muted yourself.
There are those that say that when you're talking about the tree of life, that the balance between chesed and gevurah, for instance, the gevurah is sometimes talked about as evil or deen or whatever, but the idea really is that it is all, evil is part of God also, and people have a hard time with that. I don't know it's like, it's all, because if everything is one, if it's all created, it's all that, then evil, quote unquote, is part of God. So it's all part of the tree. It's all part of the same thing. And you've got these scales that move back and forth, these pendulum or these, these.
Well,
but the idea is that, so if you have this quote unquote punishment, it's all part of the same thing. So when you have a psalm like this that has all these elements in it, to me, it's just a reflection of, in a sense, reality, or a sense of the way we see reality, the way humans are in this equation somehow.
Right, I agree. Look, what's his name? Moshe Cordovero, in his book Tomer Devorah, he argues that we should strive for the mystical 13 attributes with no punishment. All right? I mean, he's extreme in that, because he feels that that's the only way you can adequately control the passions, your other side, your own super opera, right? But he's a minority.
Yeah.
He's a minority, right? And the fact that the upper realm, but by the way, the fact is, though, that there's nothing evil. I mean, gevurah is not necessarily evil.
Oh, I don't think it is. That's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
But gevurah is not evil, right. But gevurah can be hot-tempered.
Yeah.
And it's when she's hot-tempered. And by the way, that the compassionate side, this is going to really throw you for a loop if you don't know it, the compassionate side of the Sephirot are men, and the judgmental side are women.
Well, the female or the male, I wouldn't say men and women, but I would say the female and male. Yes. I know. That's what it really does turn the world upside down. It's pretty cool.
Right. No, but I mean, look, think about it. I am Shmuel la'ahava. You love God, right? Love God, and God will love you, basically. Get all the things you need, right? Good consequences. But then it says, if you don't, boom, slam, I'm going to kick you out of the country. Right? That's the second passage of the Shema.
Right.
So right up there, it begins by talking about loving God. And the Be'ahavta doesn't have that. The first paragraph just says, love God and do this, right? Consequences are not mentioned. The reason why they put that second paragraph in is because you got to understand that there are consequences, right? He's a good parent. Right? He's a good parent.
Setting boundaries, setting limits.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Right. And and then everything's going to be, if you do this, everything's going to be great. Right? Everything's going to be great. You can reverse yourself and everything's going to be fine. Okay. All right. So, moving on. So then it's, now here, this is fascinating. Listen to this. So now, this is Adonai. Now, this is the next thing. Number 10, verse 10 is actually something that Adonai could be doing. Mashbit milchamot at katzei haaretz keshet yishaber v'kitzetz chanit agalot yisrof ba'esh. Putting a stop to wars to the ends of the earth, he will break the bow, snap the spear, and consume wagons in flames, the wagons being the wagons that contain all of these things, war wagons. All right? So Adonai is a good name to get rid of war, right? Because that is an act of great compassion. If you can end war, what better compassionate thing could you have? Now, it requires some, but what is he breaking? So he's causing wars to end, right, to the end of the earth. All the whole world. No more war. No more war. He will break bows, right? He will cut up, snap a spear, right, and burn the wagons, the war wagons. That's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good thing for Adonai. Maybe he uses that with this in mind, right? That the consequence of the desolation that has to be done is this very thing. War will be removed, okay? And then God will say, but isn't this fascinating, right? Isn't this fascinating? But note, again, the poet pops through. You're going to see these last two verses, 10 and 11, the poetry is blatant. Listen to what it says again. Mashbit milchamot. Mashbit milchamot. Ad katzei haaretz keshet yishaber kitzetz chanit. Katzei.
Kitz.
KKK. Oy gewalt. It's not another meaning to KKK. No. Okay. Not that. No. All right. But that's intentional. Right? The whole world going to have no more war, right? Both these.
Oh, and guess what the result is? The next verse, right? Which is
that's
what God is looking for.
Right now, God is talking. Now God finally talks, and He says, "Haripu, desist, cease and desist. Udu ki ani anochi Elohim." No, it's not Adonai, right? This is now Elohim talking, right?
Oh, yeah.
Anochi Elohim, arum bagoyim, arum ba'aretz. I will be exalted. I will be brought up high. I will be, highest on the highest level, made high, made great in the minds of all the nations, and on earth. So this is the end result. right? Vayom hahu yanai echad u'shmo echad. Is this messianic? Is this possible eschatological, thinking about end of days? The war to end all wars? I don't know, right? Because
I think too, the experience of God is as oneness happens when there's, wholeness, when there's peace, when there's shalom. So,
of course.
So that's what's happening. God is saying, and if we're talking in ourselves, if we're having wars within ourselves, then we're not with God, because when we're with God, we're one, we're whatever, we're that way. When we're warring in ourselves or outside, there's no peace. There's no oneness with God. Can't connect with God in that place of war.
Right. You look, remember, in Isaiah, lo yareh v'lo yashchitu, right? There'll be no more corruption, no more evil, no nothing. Right? When he talks about his vision.
Right.
Now that's the fact is that's all, he's only talking about Eretz Yisrael there. But he's saying that, but the power is going to be so great that there will be peace. Nobody's going to attack them.
If we're talking about this time of the empires and nations conquering other nations in an empirical way, I mean, what could be greater hubris than that?
This is hubris?
No, I'm saying that he has to go in and remind people, because the fact that they're coming, I mean, this is imperial warfare that's happening here.
Right. And the world, exactly. Right. And he's saying, if you guys don't do it, this is what I'm going to do. Hopefully. Please God. All right. Hopefully. That would be the hope. Right. That would be the hope. Now, the question is that thinking in line with Isaiah, who lived through all of this, don't forget. He's the prophet at the time this is going on. He's the prophet that was in Jerusalem when the siege came and then left. So he's seeing all this stuff. He knows about all this stuff. And so he says, right, that the shoot of Jesse will come forward. The lion, the child will sleep, will play over the snake's hole, and the lion will lie down with the lamb, and they'll all eat straw. They're going back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 30. They're all going to eat straw. No more taking of life for purposes of food. That's Genesis chapter 1. Everybody's vegan. Okay? So, and that's a time of total bliss and total, harmony. No chaos, no war. So one wonders if this sort of fits in again to that time frame. And I mentioned before that there are words in here that are, I don't have time to trace them out with you, but there are words here that are found in Isaiah, similar terminology, in that part of Isaiah where he builds up to this messianic image. Okay? So it fits in. So it's very likely that this is what's going on. But nobody knows for sure. Now, if that's the case, then it is a kind of a mythological solution to a real world problem. Now, the details here are the imagination of the poet. The poet is writing as he is feeling about it. They're his feelings. He doesn't claim to be a prophet, but he's imagining that this is how that might happen. So there's imagination, but the thing is, it's interesting to think that it may be something that was grounded in a real situation, and this whole psalm spun off of that. But we don't know for sure. But here, again, listen carefully. Haripu, udu, arum, haripu, udu, arum, sound. A lot of ooh, right?
No.
Five oohs.
5 oohs.
5 oohs, right? Right.
Room.
And then the one before you had 3 K. Right. So this
K. Ooh.
Right, you got it? Right. So this is poetry, guys. He's a poet. And then finally, again, the final refrain, right? Last verse 12. And again, this is the only time God speaks. This is when God speaks. It's the only time. So he's laying it out. Adonai tzvaot imanu, mizgav lanu Elohei Yaakov, Stella. Okay? Adonai tzvaot is with us. Elohei Yaakov is our refuge. He'll take care of us. He also wants to take care of the rest of the world. But you know what? If nobody wants to listen, we'll be okay. I don't say that. But you don't know where he wants us to take it. Anyway, so I think it's a fascinating, at first I was sort of, and I sort of fell in love with it because it's really, it is a well put together, it moves from step to step, and then you have the last part, this end of days type conclusion, which, sort of throws you off. You don't sort of expect it. But on the other hand, maybe what the guy's saying, this is the only solution, and what Miriam said, the world's going to hell. We need people. Maybe what he's saying is we need God to act. God, we're talking about this. We know you can do this. You can do it. Please do it. Make it happen. I know we know you love us, but please make it easy on yourself. Make it easy on all of us. Destroy the weapons. Bring the peace. Right? We love
You mean stop us from being the picked on people?
No, it's more than that. We don't have to worry about being picked on. God's covering us. That's what it says. Right? He said it more than once.
What?
The real solution is fix the world. What he said, right? You can control nature. Ultimately, you have the power to control nations, right? Do it. Bible.
Something you said, I just thought I'd started this. This isn't my question, but the Jewish comedian Gary Goldman has a bit when he talks about, the Jews hated, and then he basically says, how about the Belgians? They've had a really good run, suggesting that it's someone else's turn. And never mind, tickled my sense of humor. But I'm going back to all the repetition of God of Jacob. Earlier you had said it's Beis Yaakov and Bnei Israel, but this isn't Beis Yaakov. This is, Elohai, let me look again.
It's Elohei Yaakov.
Elohei Yaakov.
Right. I'm just saying, Yaakov is used as a name for the people, and I said
but so is Israel, or
right.
Yeah, but they're the same person.
No, I don't. I actually don't think they are, in a way, because I think of Israel as the progenitor of the tribes who were 10 sons and 2 grandsons, and Yaakov is 12 sons and a daughter that we know about. I think one is more the person and the other is the more formal progenitor. But what I was wondering, maybe based on what Marian said about Korach, that the closer link, the Korachites were Levim, so Levites, whatever the proper term is. Maybe that is why Yaakov, even though it's not Beis Yaakov, because then there's more of a link to when their line split off, not as a tribe, because Israel are the tribes and Levi wasn't a tribe. So if you say Yaakov, that makes it more of a link. Did I lose you, or should I try that again?
No, I understand what you're saying. That's not impossible. You have to understand, though, and I forgot how this breaks down. Which is which? In the north and in the south, one tended more to use Yaakov collectively, and one tended to use Israel more. Okay?
Wouldn't it be that
this guy is talking about Jerusalem? So I'm thinking, and I'm if I'm right, and Yaakov was the term that was used in the South, then this would fit into that, and it's talking about the people.
Yeah, because in the South we have we have the part that belonged to the children of Jacob, the beloved ones, weren't they?
Oh, the Levium also.
Yeah.
Because
the South is called Ephraim.
It's also
the North is,
right, the grandson.
Yeah, so although Binyamin went back and forth, in the end Binyamin, which that's Rachel, right? That's not Leah. But Levi and Yehuda are definitely, that's Leah. They're the first four. So I think it may be that Yaakov, whereas Yisrael is also Yaakov, don't forget, right? But the northern kingdom was called Israel. The southern kingdom was called Judah. So, and as I said, if this is Jerusalem he's talking about, which I think it is, so clearly he's southern orientation, so he would use Yaakov, Elohei Yaakov. Right. Okay. All right. Next week, I'm not sure. I may make a change in assignment. I'm getting tired of the Korachites. Love them. I think they're great. We've seen a lot of them. But there's a lot of other stuff I want to look at, and we're sort of behind. But there's some real good ones coming. So we may transition over there. I'll let you know, okay? I want to review the next ones that are coming up again and see what made me want to do them. But let's hold off. So right now I'm not making any assignment, okay? And if I don't get to you all, we'll manage. All right. Okay, so those of you who I will see tomorrow, I will see tomorrow. And if not, have a good one. And let's hope everybody's well. And as I always say, Shalom al Yisrael.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.